Born in Honolulu, Hawaii, and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada, Alexius Russell talked about being a doctor. Since age 3, this has been a goal for her. Through mental, physical, and emotional abuse, as well as homelessness, she persevered with unwavering faith toward her goal. She remained an honor student through school, starting college at Southern Nevada University at age 16. She then enlisted in the Navy as an interior communications electrician at age 18. While aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt, a fellow sailor told her about the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences. Russell reached out for assistance from the program director and administrative officer and reapplied until she finally was accepted to USU and 4 other medical schools. This 10-year path has brought Russell to becoming a first-year medical student at USU, balancing her studies, coursework, clinical activities, and self-care. She utilizes different online platforms to assist minority individuals trying to navigate the medical school process.
Hey, good afternoon, Ensign Russell. It's a pleasure to have you here for our very first Surgeon General's dive-in discussion. And I think you know that about a year ago, the Chief of Naval Operations really recommended that we take some time and really talk and have in-depth conversations and really learn how to listen to each other and to explore each other's backgrounds and the unique aspects that we each have. Throughout Navy medicine, we've been doing a series we call Enduring Discussions at every level. And I'm excited to say we're expanding that effort with the Surgeon General's dive-in discussions. So you're our very first guest, and we're really excited for you to be here because you have such an inspiring story, and I'd really like to learn more about that. So I'm going to just dive in, if you don't mind. So how long have you wanted to be a doctor, and what's the source of that?
So as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a doctor. My mom reminded me during my application season last year that at the age of 3, I made the bold statement, I want to be a doctor. So I'm sure the why at 3 is definitely altered now. But I feel like my why has evolved throughout the years. At 7, my mom had a stroke after having my sister. And I just remember having so many questions, what led up to this? Could this have been prevented? And just watching her regain her mobility and her speech, I just was overwhelmed with curiosity as to what's the science behind it. At 13, I had another instance where my uncle, who I had not met up until that point, actually came into my life, and he had AIDS at the time. So my mom was trying to nurse him as much as she could. I would help change his bandages out and help him with his baths. But once again, just having overwhelming curiosity as to what led up to this. What was the reasoning behind it? Why was he so sick? And so that made me look more into some sciences. I always excelled in school. School is my safe haven, so I did really well to the point where at 16 I was awarded a scholarship to go to college. So I started college at 16, and it was always so funny when it was time for introductions because I would say, my name's Alexis, I'm 16, and it would just be shock. Everyone would be shocked, like, why is a 16-year-old here at college? So I continued, researching and started actually volunteering at some hospitals because I knew I wanted to help people, and that's the generic response, you want to help people. But throughout my time in the Navy and just the circumstances I endured, my why just became deeper, became more of okay, you want to help people, well, what else? And so when I was in my 3rd year in the military, I had went to a nail shop. Was on leave. Nail shop was full of people, and I remember coming out the restroom, and when the stylist was on the floor unconscious, and I remember just saying, call 911, and I proceeded to do CPR, and I didn't think anything else to it, just started doing CPR, and it was the first time I actually seen someone go limp, but I just continued, and she came back to, and I asked her the questions we were taught to ask, and the paramedics came, and then I remember just being shocked and crying because it was such a surreal experience. And so the next day I went to visit her, and she thanked me and said, "You're at the right place at the right time." And so for me, that why was what propelled me to get back onto my trajectory of finishing up school, and getting closer to becoming a physician. So my why now is much more than just wanting to help people, or just the science or anatomy that I love about human anatomy. It's more so about showing individuals who may have a similar background that you can do this. We need the representation. We need those who have a desire to, embark on this challenging voyage to see someone like them who may have not had the greatest circumstances coming up, see that you can do this. So it's still changing. I'm sure my why will continue to evolve throughout my 4 years, but that's why now.
Oh, that's fantastic. So it wasn't a direct line, though, from that initial going to college to going to medical school. So can you help us through that journey? Because my understanding is you've taken advantage of a program called Enlisted to MD Preparatory Program. Can you explain what that is and how you got interested in that?
Yes, sir. So I'll start with EMDP2 and what that is. So the Enlisted to Medical Preparatory Degree Program is an opportunity for enlisted personnel throughout all service branches to take a post-bac that will have them competitive to apply to medical school. So they give you the tools necessary to apply and be competitive. The first year, it's all the prerequisites that you need, the sciences, and then we are given a Kaplan MCAT prep course, as well as partnered with a mentor, a physician mentor, as well as a medical school mentor to help guide us through the process. We get help from advisors and doctors at George Mason, as well as doctors at Walter Reed and USU to assist us through this process, because applying to medical school is a challenge in itself. And then in the second year, you're given an opportunity to get a master's if you choose to, but at that point you're just waiting to to see where you're going to go for medical school. They encourage you to apply to USU. However, you can apply to any medical school that you want to, and if you're accepted to another medical school outside of USU, then you apply to HPSP and you'll use that scholarship to attend medical school. So it's a great opportunity. You only need a bachelor's to be accepted into the program. And a bachelor's in anything doesn't have to necessarily be the science, because you'll take the post-bac to gain those sciences. So for me, getting into the program, it wasn't the easiest. I did have to apply twice, but I got into the program and it was amazing. It literally changed my ideology. There were so many things that I didn't know that went into applying to medical school, and it literally propelled me into the place I am today.
Great. So what were you doing when you applied? So you were enlisted, and as you told me earlier, you were aboard ship. Can you kind of tell me how you found out about the program? And how'd you end up aboard ship first? Let's start there.
Yes, we'll start at the beginning of my naval career. So I'll take you back to when I was still in my last semester of college. So at 18, I made the bold decision to leave my household because I no longer want to endure the mental, physical abuse that I encountered growing up. And I didn't have a plan when I left. I just knew midnight on my 18th birthday I was leaving. And I was still in my last semester of my sophomore year of school, so I had to figure out how to juggle my grades, juggle a call center job, and figured out where I was going to lay my head at, where I was going to get my next meal. From March to November, I couch surfed. Sometimes I would sleep in the stalls at the college because I didn't really have a stable household to be at. But I still need to finish my semester. It was during that time, while I was waiting to go to the Navy in November, where I thought about, this is really my lowest I'm at right now, and I wanted to make sure that when I was in a better place, I can help people, and because I understood what it felt like to need and to want and to be judged for not having something. So that was where my altruism was born, and I said, once I'm in a place to help, and not just help in the sense of becoming a doctor, but just help in general with homeless individuals, individuals with disabilities, I would. So November came, I went to boot camp. I went to A school and C school. And I went as IC. I wanted to be a corpsman, of course. To me, that was a closer step to becoming a doctor, but at the time, Comer was overmanned. So I came in as interior communications electrician, and I was stationed on the USS Theodore Roosevelt. I hit the deck plate running. I got fully qualified before I even took my third class advancement exam. I had both my pins, and then I took my exam, and I made rank to third class. And then in 2013, I was meritoriously advanced to second class. And I was also named Blue Jacket of the Year that year. So that was a very busy but rewarding year. And then that was actually the same year that the nail salon incident happened, where I gave CPR to the nail stylist. And that pushed me to say, hey, it's time to get back in school. You know, you've done what you need to do in the Navy, you've made rank, you're, now the assistant leading petty officer in over 3 workshops. Let's get back to fulfilling your ideology of what self-fulfillment is, and that was becoming a doctor. So I got back into school, I started going to Old Dominion University, and we were in the yard, so preparing to get ready for deployment after leaving the yard. So after work, I would go to ODU and do my classes. But then 2015 came and we got deployed. And I said, well, I don't want to stop going to school. I want to finish going to school. So I transferred from ODU to University of Phoenix online. And despite River City, despite long hours, because I was in air department as IC, I still continued on with school and ended up graduating in 2017. At the time, I was stationed in Arizona as a recruiter. And I actually volunteered to be a medical recruiter because I was like, okay, well, let me figure out what opportunities there are just in case. So I was doing medical recruiting, and that's when I ended up applying to EMDP2. And like I said, the first time I did not get accepted. So it definitely hurt my confidence because I had my package reviewed from prominent officers, physicians, and they all said, you're a shoo-in, you're going to get in. And I said, okay, I'm going to get in. And I didn't. And I just remember being so sad, I cried. And I just had to build my confidence back up and reapply and basically understand that just because I received no the first time, didn't mean that I didn't have the capability to become a doctor. There was still an opportunity there. So I contacted Dr. Green, who was director of the program, and I didn't think she would meet with me at all, but she actually met with me, and we sat down and we discussed my package. At the time, Master Chief Rawson was over the program as well, and I spoke with him, and I reapplied, and I was accepted. The 2 years flew by, but it was amazing, and it was a great opportunity, and I am grateful for the opportunity that the Navy has provided me, not just in my personal life, just becoming the mature person I have become, but also the tools it's given me to be successful in my dream career.
Well, that's great. So what do you think made the difference between the first application and the second? So what was the advice, or what moves did you make to strengthen your package?
So at the time, EMDP2 was really a very new program. Even my CO, he didn't understand what I was applying to. He said, hey, you're a great recruiter, I'm going to sign for it, but I don't know, are you MESIP? Are you referring to MESIP? Like, no, sir, it's called EMDP2. So the literature and the NAV admin, it was very minimal. So I didn't really have many people the first time to advise me on how to really put my package together. I went off of other officer packages. So I think just having that guidance and just having someone taking the time out their day, such as Dr. Green and Master Chief Russell, those are very busy individuals that take the time out and point to me and go, hey, maybe you should, retake your ACT or SAT, or, what's your why? I'm not seeing your why in your personal statement. Let's dig a little deeper than that. even if you have to get a little bit vulnerable, or let's explain your sophomore year grades, made me really sit back and kind of reanalyze, like, okay, how am I going to approach this? And I took all their advice and I redid my package and ended up being successful.
Great. So this is your first year in the program, and you were telling me that right now you're doing a organ system curriculum.
Yes, sir. So USU, they have a very unique program where they do module and system-based learning. So we have 14 modules, and we are only in preclinical for 18 months. So currently we are in the third module, which is cardiopulmonary and renal, two of some of the most important systems of your body. So it's definitely hard, but it's just fascinating how where I'm at now from where I started back in August. It's so much, and just how some of those whys that I was pondering as a child are being answered, like, stroke and pulmonary embolisms and syncope, and understanding how that's all connected, how if one system's down, how this is going to affect the system behind it or in front of it. I definitely enjoy the way USU has implemented their curriculum and how we get face-to-face interaction with Walter Reed physicians and patients, as well as our SP patients, just being able to apply the information that we're learning in the classroom, and then sit with this patient and try to figure out what their pathology and their physiology behind their disease is. It's fascinating because I was just scared about taking the MCAT a year ago. So USU, I think, is definitely their curriculum. I think only 8% of the U.S. medical schools actually does the same type of curriculum, but I feel like it's worth it because we get into the wards and clinic a lot faster, and I think having that realistic, situation where you have to apply that information, you see it, like how it's going to present, I think it ends up making USU medical school students very well prepared.
Great. I'm almost ready to start over, but not quite. So I think you have some questions for me.
Yes, I do, and thank you for your questions, Rear Admiral Gilliam. I appreciate them. So some questions I have for you. First question is, what does diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to you? And how does Navy medicine benefit from having more diverse groups of doctors, nurses, dentists, and corpsmen?
Yeah, that's a great question. Diversity, equity, and inclusion really is a powerhouse. I think that's the engine for the organization, because certainly throughout my career, but especially now as a Surgeon General, I just see how important it is that we have a diversity of thought, that we have a diversity of background, and that we leverage that. It's been well recognized that there are disparities in healthcare in the United States, and much of that is based on some mismatches between physicians and providers and their patients. And so I think it's a real opportunity to match up, if you will, our workforce in Navy medicine and those we serve. Equity, I think, to me, it's mutual respect, and we all bring strengths to the mission. It's a very important mission, and the more that we can be united, understanding each other, and really tackling the issues together, and using those strengths and individual differences, if you will, the better.
Thank you. I appreciate the fact that you brought up just in your time how things have evolved and it's changing. Now you have that mindset of bringing more to the table and getting that perspective. So my next question is, what is your approach to understanding perspectives of colleagues from different backgrounds?
I think the CNO is right. We have to take the time to stop and listen. We all have implicit biases just based on how we grew up and the world that we know. And so I think taking the time to enlarge our understanding of particularly people who are different from us is time well spent. The other way is kind of indirect, but I'm a voracious reader, And I found that I'm exploring books that are perhaps I wouldn't have read at an earlier time, and those really help me understand different perspectives. And so I found that a valuable way to try to broaden my perspectives as well.
Would you mind sharing one of the books that you read?
Yeah, I knew you'd put me on the spot. And The Vanishing Half is one I just recently read, and it's about two sisters who are separated kind of in their teens, growing up in the South, and they're African American, and one is lighter skinned, and she's able to pass at the time. This is the 30s. She's able to pass at the time as the dominant ethnicity in New York, and actually marries a Caucasian husband. And then the other sister stays in the South, in the town that she grew up in, and it's her kind of working through this issue of what her sister has done. And I had never really thought that within an ethnicity that there would be those considerations. So I found that really eye-opening.
Yes, that definitely sounds like an interesting read, and the differences just in a particular race of the shade and how your trajectory in life is altered just because of that is very interesting. Without naming any names, have you ever had a situation where someone was being culturally insensitive, sexist, racist, or homophobic? And if so, what did you do? Sure.
There have been various experiences. Some have been perhaps more informal. An individual, that I'm associated with, perhaps we're in a group and they say something I think is insensitive, and I've tried to bring that to their attention very diplomatically and say, hey, you may not be aware. And frankly, I've had people say that to me, and I found it very eye-opening because I wasn't aware that what I was saying could be perceived that way. So I think, I think that's one way that we each kind of pay attention to those norms and those behaviors that we expect, and we informally enforce them. And then as I've gotten into Navy medicine leadership, I've been involved in situations where we've had to officially intervene. But generally, I like the model where you try to resolve those things at the lowest level, because I think in large part people are unaware perhaps that they're expressing implicit bias, and most of those situations I find people correct themselves. But if we have to become more official and address things, we will, because again, fundamentally our success depends on mutual respect, and if we're not following that, then I think that's just a decrement to us being able to carry out our mission.
I like the fact that you brought up our own implicit biases, and we all have them, and be able to reflect on them and then try to correct them. I think that takes a huge responsibility that we all need to partake in. So thank you for that. How do you encourage people to honor uniqueness of each individual? What is Navy medicine doing to make sure everyone feels included?
That's a great question. I'm a huge fan. I think folks will know that I'm a huge fan of what are known as high reliability behaviors. And to be a high reliability organization, one of the fundamental tenets is that you defer to expertise. And that expertise often is based on somebody's individual background and perspective. Of course, their training in certain technical situations. So I'm always on the lookout for leveraging people's strengths. What is it that they do particularly well that comes naturally to them, and how do we use that to strengthen the organization as a whole? So encouraging. I have 4 Ps. Shameless plug for my guiding priorities, but it's extremely well-trained people operating on optimized platforms, demonstrating high reliability behavior to produce medical power for naval superiority. And I would say that individual strengths are critical to being successful in that mission.
I absolutely agree. My last question for you is, what advice do you have for future physicians, such as myself, who aspire to become the Navy Surgeon General?
Yeah, that's a great question. I never intended to be the Surgeon General. I didn't go to Uniformed Services University to do that. I wanted to be just a stellar clinician and to be able to serve the warfighter and their families. As I progressed in my career, I realized that if I wanted to have the impact that I knew that I could have, I needed to get out of just entirely the clinical realm. And so it started pretty innocently, just on the risk management committee at Naval Medical Center San Diego, and I realized there were opportunities to raise the bar for the care that we were providing. And then I think based on my experience with that, I said, hey, there are, somebody has to kind of run the organization, and so you need to step up and have that positive influence. And
Right.
And fortunately, folks saw me do that, and I think realized that I had, some skill in doing that, and I was given opportunities to expand that scope. I enjoyed it. I realized that it was something that brought me a lot of fulfillment, and so I guess to answer your question, it's follow your heart. Whatever you're really good at, whatever you enjoy doing, you can invest yourself in. Do that, and it may lead to senior leadership in Navy medicine, but it might mean being really a clinical thought leader in your area of expertise, and that's great. Not everybody needs to become the Surgeon General, and there are times, frankly, I even miss the middle of the night stuff, going in and fixing a child's elbow or something of that nature. So there are trade-offs, and you have to kind of think through those as you go along. But there are many ways to make a very tangible contribution in your career, absolutely clinically, but also I think all clinicians should take some form of leadership outside of just the clinic or the OR to raise the bar for the organization. So Alexis, I think for those that are in your situation, what would you recommend as some of the tools or resources that they could take advantage of so that they can reach their goals?
I didn't realize how ill-prepared some individuals were for applying to medical school until I was actually applying myself. While I was studying for the MCAT, I ran into a group of individuals who, attended various schools, who weren't actually in the military, some who were, that didn't have the guidance or the tools to be competitive in the upcoming application season. It was May, and it was about 24 of these individuals I took on to start tutoring. They had no idea about their personal statement. They hadn't started on their activity statements. They hadn't got their recommendation letters, and it really broke my heart because they went to some prominent schools, and I was wondering, what are your guidance counselors talking to you about? And they would tell me they emphasize the MCAT, the MCAT, the MCAT. And yes, the MCAT is a piece of the pie, but it's not the whole pie. There's so many other aspects that go into this application. So I decided to create a YouTube to speak upon some of these other things that you need to be successful in the application season, because for one, it's a very expensive process. So I always encourage those who are interested to apply for their fee assistance program. Since COVID, they have raised the bar as far as like how much you can make a year to still be able to apply for that. So I encourage that. I also started a Google Drive where I just put MCAT resources that they can use, free books that they can start studying if they can't afford some of these very expensive prep companies. And then in my videos, I let them know about the tests that they have to take and that outside of the MCAT, how to sit down and do an interview, how to fill out an application. And I put my application public so they can see what an application looks like. I think the application is very overwhelming if you have no idea what you're getting yourself into. So that ties into my why again, wanting to help people who are interested in applying to medical school navigate through this process. and anything that I have or have done, share it so, you know, they can have the opportunity to get closer and not have to do what I did to try to figure out the process. You know, everyone's not fortunate enough to be in the military to apply to EMDP2, but they still would like to have the same opportunity. And like I said, it's expensive. It's very expensive to apply to medical school. So my YouTube is Becoming Dr. Russell, and I, you know, share apps I use to study. I share schedules that you can follow. Like I said, free resources to study for the MCAT, as well as the prep that I used outside of EMDP2, which increased my score 26 points. And then I also have an IG where I allow anyone to contact me and ask me questions. You know, I feel like I put myself out there to be a mentor and, you know, answer questions that a lot of individuals have, but they're afraid. You know, they're like, oh, well, she's there, so maybe she doesn't have time. I get that all the time. They're, oh, I'm sorry to bother you. I know you're busy, which I appreciate that because I am busy. But I know what it was like to be in their place a year ago and wondering how to navigate through this, you know, sea of applications and interviews. So just having someone to sit there who went through the process, available for free, you know, without having to pay, because there's companies out there that will do it for you, but you have to pay. Just give back. I feel like as I'm going through this process, I just want to reach back out and hold the hand of the individual who is trying to pursue the same route as I am.
That's really admirable. So apparently you don't sleep because you're a first-year medical student and you have a YouTube channel and you're doing all of this counseling. So thank you, because I think that's really important that others can see in you not only a possibility, but that you're actually giving them the tangible guidance and advice that will get them there. So Alexis, thank you. And thank you so much for being with us today. This has been really enlightening for me. And I think is a great example of what we're trying to do with these conversations. And that's understand each other, understand how we can make the organization better. And as I mentioned, I think that's fundamental to realizing our vision of being a high reliability organization, which in our case, provides medical power for naval superiority. So thank you so much, and best wishes as you continue your career, and we're cheering for you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.